Once upon a time, in a grand castle nestled in a winter wonderland, a queen sat sewing by her window. As she pricked her finger, 3 drops of blood fell onto the freshly fallen snow. Gazing at the striking contrast of red, white, and the black of the ebony window frame, she wished for a child with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. Soon after, her wish was granted, and she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl whom she named Snow White. But tragically, the queen passed away shortly after. A year later, the king remarried. His new wife was a woman of stunning beauty, but her heart was cold, filled with pride and vanity. She possessed a magical mirror, and every day she would stand before it and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And every day the mirror would reply, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." This pleased her greatly, for she knew the mirror always spoke the truth. But as Snow White grew, her beauty blossomed, becoming more radiant with each passing year. One day, when the queen asked her usual question, the mirror gave a different, chilling answer. "My queen, you are fair, it is true, but Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen's face twisted with rage and jealousy. From that moment on, she despised her stepdaughter. Her envy grew like a poison ivy, choking any affection she might have had until she could no longer bear the sight of Snow White. Consumed by her wicked jealousy, the queen summoned a huntsman. "Take Snow White deep into the forest," she commanded, her voice dripping with venom. "I want you to bring me back her heart as proof that you have done my bidding." The huntsman, though horrified, was bound by his duty to the queen. He led the innocent princess into the woods, but when he drew his knife, he found he couldn't do it. Looking into Snow White's terrified, tear-filled eyes, his resolve crumbled. "Run, child," he urged her. "Run away and never come back." To deceive the queen, he hunted a wild boar and brought its heart back to the castle. The cruel queen, believing it to be Snow White's, felt a wicked sense of triumph. Meanwhile, Snow White was alone and terrified in the vast, dark forest. She ran and ran over sharp stones and through thorny bushes, with wild animals rustling in the undergrowth around her. Just as she was about to collapse from exhaustion, as evening fell, she stumbled upon a tiny, peculiar-looking cottage. Hesitantly, she pushed open the door and stepped inside. Everything in the cottage was small and tidy. There was a little table set with 7 tiny plates, 7 little spoons, 7 little knives and forks, and 7 little mugs. Against the wall stood 7 little beds, all neatly made with pristine white covers. Starving and exhausted, Snow White ate a little bit of porridge from each plate and drank a tiny drop of wine from each mug, not wanting to take too much from any single one. Then she tried out the beds. One was too long, another too short, until finally the 7th one was just right. She lay down, said a small prayer, and fell fast asleep. Later that night, the owners of the cottage returned. They were the 7 dwarfs who spent their days mining for gold and jewels deep within the mountains. As they lit their 7 little candles, they immediately noticed that something was amiss. The first dwarf said, "Who has been sitting in my chair?" The second asked, "Who has been eating from my plate?" The third, "Who has been taking my bread?" The fourth, "Who has been eating my vegetables?" The fifth, "Who has been using my fork?" The sixth, "Who has been drinking from my mug?" But the seventh, looking at his bed, whispered, "Look, someone is sleeping in my bed." The other dwarfs gathered around, holding their candles high, their eyes wide with astonishment. "Oh my goodness," they gasped in unison. "What a lovely child!" They were so enchanted by her peaceful, beautiful face that they didn't have the heart to wake her. The seventh dwarf, whose bed she occupied, slept for 1 hour with each of his companions, and so the night passed. The next morning, when Snow White woke up and saw the 7 dwarfs staring at her, she was startled, but they were very friendly and asked for her name. "My name is Snow White," she replied. She then told them her sad story about her cruel stepmother, the huntsman, and her terrifying flight through the forest. The dwarfs listened with great sympathy. After hearing her tale, they said, "If you will keep house for us, cook, make the beds, wash, sew, and knit, and keep everything clean and orderly, then you can stay with us, and you will want for nothing." "Oh yes," said Snow White, "with all my heart." And so she stayed. She kept the cottage neat and tidy, and every morning the dwarfs would go off to the mountains to work, and every evening they would return for the delicious meal she had prepared. Before they left each day, they would always warn her, "Be careful. Your stepmother will soon find out you are here. Don't let anyone in." Back at the castle, the evil queen, certain that Snow White was gone forever, went to her magic mirror. "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" she asked, expecting the familiar, flattering reply. But the mirror answered, "My queen, you are fair, it is true. But Snow White, beyond the 7 mountains with the 7 dwarfs, is still 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen shrieked with fury. She had been tricked. She realized the huntsman had deceived her, and that Snow White was still alive. Her wicked mind immediately began plotting a new, more direct way to get rid of her rival. Using her dark magic, she disguised herself as an old peddler woman, her face wrinkled and her back stooped. She packed a basket with colorful, silken laces and journeyed over the 7 mountains to the dwarf's cottage. She knocked on the door and called out, "Pretty things for sale, cheap." Snow White peeked through the window and, seeing the harmless-looking old woman, thought there was no harm in letting her in. "Good day, my pretty child," the disguised queen said. "Would you like some lovely laces?" She held up a bright, colorful one. Snow White was tempted. She allowed the old woman to lace up her bodice with the new laces, but the queen pulled the laces so tight, so quickly, that Snow White couldn't breathe. She fell to the floor as if lifeless. "Now I am the fairest at last," the queen cackled before scurrying away. That evening, when the dwarfs returned, they were horrified to find their dear Snow White lying on the ground, pale and still. They quickly saw the tight laces and cut them. As air filled her lungs again, a faint blush returned to her cheeks, and she began to breathe. After she had recovered, she told them what had happened. The dwarfs were stern. That was the evil queen. They said, "You must be more careful. Do not open the door for anyone, no matter what." Meanwhile, the queen returned to her castle and her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror's response sent her into another fit of rage. "My queen, you are fair, it is true. But Snow White, beyond the 7 mountains with the 7 dwarfs, is still 1,000 times fairer than you." Furious that her plan had failed, she devised an even more cunning scheme. This time she crafted a beautiful comb, but she coated its teeth with a potent, fast-acting poison. Disguising herself as a different old woman, she once again made the journey to the cottage. She knocked and offered the beautiful comb for sale. Snow White, remembering the dwarf's warning, said, "I'm not allowed to let anyone in." But the queen was persuasive. "You can at least look," she said, holding up the glittering comb. The comb was so exquisite that Snow White was tricked again. She opened the door. The queen offered to comb her hair for her, and the moment the poisoned teeth touched her scalp, Snow White collapsed. When the dwarfs came home, they found her on the floor once more. They immediately spotted the comb in her hair and pulled it out. Almost instantly, Snow White revived and told them what had happened. The dwarfs warned her again, even more seriously this time, never ever open the door again. The queen, back at her mirror, was met with the same infuriating news. Snow White was still alive and still the fairest. Now she was beside herself with rage. "Snow White shall not live," she screamed, "even if it costs me my own life." She went to a secret, locked room in the castle, a place where she practiced her darkest magic. There she crafted her most wicked creation, a poison apple. It was a beautiful apple, half white and half a brilliant, tempting red. The red side was infused with a poison so powerful that a single bite would cause an eternal sleep. For her third attempt, she disguised herself as a simple farmer's wife. When she arrived at the cottage, Snow White called out, "I cannot open the door to anyone." "That's fine with me," replied the queen. "I just want to get rid of these apples. Here, let me give you one." "No," said Snow White, "I cannot accept anything." "Are you afraid of poison?" the wicked queen asked with a sly smile. "Look, I will cut the apple in 2. You eat the red half, and I will eat the white half." Because the apple was so cleverly made, only the red side was poisoned. The queen took a bite of the safe white half. Seeing this, Snow White lost her suspicion and took the tempting red half. She had barely taken a bite when she fell to the ground, seemingly dead. The queen's eyes gleamed with triumph, white as snow, red as blood, black as ebony wood. She sneered. "This time the dwarfs won't be able to wake you," and when she returned to her mirror and asked her question, it finally replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." When the dwarfs returned that evening, they found Snow White lying on the floor. She wasn't breathing. They tried everything. They unlaced her, washed her with water and wine, searched for anything suspicious, but nothing worked. Their beloved Snow White was gone. They mourned for 3 whole days. She looked so peaceful and alive, with her rosy cheeks, that they couldn't bear to bury her in the cold, dark ground. Instead, they built a beautiful coffin of glass so they could see her from all sides. They inscribed her name in golden letters, declaring she was a princess. They placed the coffin on a mountain top, and one dwarf always stayed to watch over it. For a long, long time, Snow White lay in her glass coffin unchanging, as if she were only sleeping. Then one day a prince was riding through the forest and came upon the dwarf's cottage, seeking shelter for the night. He saw the glass coffin on the mountain and the beautiful maiden inside. He was so captivated by her beauty that he fell instantly in love. He pleaded with the dwarfs, "Let me have the coffin. I will give you whatever you want for it." But the dwarfs refused. So the prince begged, "Then let me have it as a gift. For I cannot live without seeing Snow White. I will honor and cherish her as my own beloved." The dwarfs, seeing his deep and genuine sorrow, took pity on him and agreed. The prince had his servants carry the glass coffin away. As they were carrying it, one of them stumbled on a tree root. The jolt dislodged the piece of poisoned apple that was stuck in Snow White's throat. Her eyes fluttered open. She pushed up the lid of the coffin and sat up, completely revived. "Where am I?" she asked, bewildered. The prince, overjoyed, rushed to her side. "You are with me," he said. He told her everything that had happened and declared his love for her. "Come with me to my father's castle. You shall be my wife." Snow White, looking at the kind and handsome prince, fell in love with him too. She agreed, and a magnificent wedding was planned. To their wedding feast, they invited everyone, including Snow White's wicked stepmother. The queen, dressed in her finest clothes, consulted her mirror one last time before leaving. "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror answered, "My queen, you are fair, it is true. But the young queen is 1,000 times fairer than you." The evil queen was stunned. She was terrified, but her curiosity and envy were so great that she had to go and see this new young queen. When she arrived and saw that the bride was none other than Snow White, she stood frozen in terror and rage. As punishment for her cruelty, a pair of iron slippers had been heated over a fire. She was forced to put them on and dance in the red-hot shoes until she fell down, never to rise again. As for Snow White and her prince, they ruled their kingdom with kindness and grace, and they lived happily ever after.